Hello and welcome to Comprehension Point's video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books, discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of Crewel by Gennifer Albin. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 14. I am 5 and my mother puts on cosmetics at the bathroom sink, but every cosmetic detracts instead of enhances. The mascara erases her lashes, the rogue hollows her cheeks, and the lipstick removes her smile. I feel like the author is trying so hard to make this dynamic of people who wear makeup are evil and are to be trusted, yet slamming women who wear makeup is swinging way too hard over to the opposite side that it simply turns into misogyny again. Ad has a nightmare where she's forced to watch as her family fades and melts away into nothing. Then they transform into Joss, who is motionless, and finally he becomes Eric, who motions for her to come to him. Time passes and Ad is stuck in some sort of limbo. Nobody but Joss comes to see her, so she remains in her room all day long. The two of them share superficial stories about their lives. I say superficial because they know that there are mics that will catch them if they try to talk about anything too serious. My big brother was only 10 months older than me, he says. My condolences to his mother. The fact that her husband probably immediately put his sausage into her the nanosecond that she popped the first baby out is really gross. Ad also expresses horror over how close the brothers are in age. She explains to the readers that while other girls her age are right now being taught about the birds and the bees, her parents sat her down years ago to make sure that she understood. However, as she's basically a nun at this point, she feels as though it's useless info to have. Being with Joss, who does have experience, makes her feel really bad. She then tells us that according to the guild, nobody goes hungry. While she personally never went hungry, apparently a lot of people where Joss lived did, which is baffling to me because how can you live in a place where fishing is the most common occupation and yet a lot of people are starving? This is once again proving that all of the problems could be resolved by the Spencers, yet they're not. While Joss talks about hunting, Ad tells us that this is part of the code. He's a fisherman by trade, but he talks about game hunting for bears and cougars. The bears are ministry officials and cougars are spinsters. Naming the Spencers a double entendre for older women seeking a romantic relationship with younger man is 100% a choice here. Ad tries to ask if he knows of a spinster attacking a stag by way of asking about Eric. However, when it becomes obvious that Joss doesn't know what she's talking about, she instead asks if hearing or sight is better for hunting. Joss gets that code loud and clear and indicates that they only have mics in the room, not cameras. They then pretend like he left the room and she silently gestures for him to go walk across the rug and sit by the fire. She then proceeds to manipulate the time wave. Ad isn't quite sure what she's doing, but when she grabbed the thread, the fire stopped moving and releasing them gets the fire going again. The way she describes it is like a pocket that's out of sync with reality, with time. When she tells him that time is always moving, he asks if it can ever go backwards. However, as you probably figured out, if Ad could manipulate time to redo everything, she obviously would have by now. It doesn't work like that. Obviously, Joss has a lot of questions about Ad's ability to manipulate the weave without a loom. He agrees that Honora was right to tell her to keep this to herself. However, he goes on to say that there were whispers about the next Crueler having been found, but people were still of the opinion that it was between Ad and Brianna. It explains to her that once a year, Honora still goes to the mines to get the raw materials used by all the other Spencers. Ad butts in to say that in school they learned that it was machines who delivered the materials, to which Joss replies, "Don't you feel like a machine?" Well, ladies, what are we being compared to today? A delivery truck. As you know, the Guild has made unprecedented advances in mind mapping technology, and they will be utilizing this new capability by mapping every spinster. Yeah, that's not weird or creepy at all. Reminds me of the Borg. However, the way that Honora is speaking to Ad, cold and distant, is kind of off to Ad. At first, Ad thinks that this is because Honora was punished by Mela for Ad's misbehavior, but I'm wondering if Honora herself hasn't already been remapped into a brainless zombie. Anxiety issues. I was having strange urges, so naturally I spoke to Lorisil and she got me into the clinic right away. Oh yes, you and Brianna will be the last of the spinsterhood to be mapped. We did it by seniority, and Nora says, folding her hands into her lap and smiling. Even Lorisil? I don't know. I don't have access to the list, she says, although Lorisil should have been the first to go. First to go. Is that why she hasn't visited me? Why she didn't step in when Mela punished me? Did a new Lorisil do this to Nora? That might explain a lot if the government is now even overriding the woman who can manipulate time itself. I think we all know that Ed is most likely going to use her powers to get out before they thread lobotomize her. Honora leaves when Josh shows up with her lunch. Ad pulls him into the bubble and doesn't say anything about what Honora said to her, which I think is odd. Why wouldn't you express concern about that? Joss declares that her fingers are fully healed now. Ad eats with her fingers, which is kind of a choice, I guess. It doesn't say what she was eating, but I imagine that it was mashed potatoes and steak. Ad says that she's going to have to go back to work now that she's all better. Joss suggests that they should simply stay in the bubble forever. He goes on to tell her that now she's the second person who knows that he's working at the cometry. When she expresses confusion over this, he explains that the other person isn't exactly a friend. He kind of implies that it's some sort of guild person who'd report them, so my guess is that it's Eric. Somehow. She tries to ask him what his plan is, however, I'm kind of under the impression that he's at the I didn't think that I'd get this far part now. Ad jokes about being thrown into the dungeon, and then Joss kisses her, and although she compares it to her kiss with Eric, I can't help but know that this is way steamier than with Eric. Chapter 15. As Joss and Ad lie in her little time bubble, she imagines for a second that she'd met Joss through a marriage profile, that things were normal instead of her being held prisoner here because of what she can do. She then finally tells him that every Spencer is going to get their minds mapped. She says that she thinks that it's so that they can study how their abilities work, but at the same time she also admits that they're doing it to remove problematic behaviors. Horse, a dead horse, here to again ask why it is that the guild simply doesn't raise every single little girl until they can determine if she has spinning abilities or not. I don't think that I'm ever going to get an answer to this question, however. Sometime later, Ad walks up to Laura Steele's tower. There she finds an endless expanse of some more magic screens showing her beautiful landscape. Laura Steele asks Ad to describe her home, and when she does, the scenery starts to change to Ad's backyard. Also, pets were made illegal 20 years ago, but one of the perks of being a Crewler is that Laura Steele has a pet cat, which I guess maybe they don't have a rat problem when you can literally remove pests from grain silos with spinster magic. Then the book takes a really hard turn into bizarre metaphysical when Ad asks what's under the weave. Laura Steele pulls back a corner of one of the magic screens to show her that there's this whole other layer. None of it is real, I whisper. It depends on your definition of real, Laura Steele replies. I can touch this floor, I can touch you, I can eat the food at mealtime. How is that not real? Obviously, this is a really difficult concept for your average person to wrap their head around. Forget about a girl whose education consists solely of finishing school. Laura Steele explains that the guild doesn't want people to know about this, but that it's hard to hide the truth from the people who can do what they do. Which, Horror is here to ask why it is that Laura Steele doesn't simply stop all of this. She's seemingly all-powerful and could literally remove every single person standing in her way if she wanted. Yet she doesn't. Why? We create auras, she says, but we only create a mantle, a cover, if you will. Matter and time exist on another planet, and we merely harness them. The looms allow us to weave and create auras. Our reality is layered upon another world. Earth. Earth. And there it is. This is the point where Laura Steele offers Ad the blue or red pill. She then goes on to say the usual dystopia stuff about what happened to Earth, although she doesn't say in as much words, but I get the gist that Earth is now a ruined hellscape where people couldn't actually survive. And then, because you knew that it was coming, we can't tell anybody about any of this. You would be surprised at the amount of discontent there, the number of plots the guild quells each year. Eris is not as peaceful as they would make the citizens believe. Some would want to leave Eris, and the guild would never allow it. What? Discontent? Plots? No! I would have never guessed. All the sarcasm. Like, who are you kidding? In the few months that we've been with Ad, I have yet to see a singular reason why anybody would actively choose this. All we've seen is murder, abuse of power, pedophilia, but all under a fancy tapestry called Eris. Laura Steele continues on and says that she's going to explain everything that her own teacher, the second Crueler, told her. That the first Crueler was from Earth and obviously remembered a lot, but a lot of stuff was lost when she died. She explains that there was a large war and a bomb, and the bomb seriously sounds like a nuclear bomb, as if described by somebody outside of Earth's history and had only ever heard it explained briefly in passing. Laura Steele continues on to explain about how people then invented the looms, which, honestly, the book kind of loses me at this point because it's kind of vague and confusing. And asks one super important question. How is it that males invented the reality looms when only women have weaving talent? To which Laura Steele is basically like, who says that they don't? The guild can control women better. Laura Steele sees me start to protest and holds her hand up to stop me. Whether you like it or not, they do a damn good job of controlling us. She literally admits that this is systematic sexism. It's not even said quietly or a read between the lines moment. Laura Steele looked Ad in the eyes and said this with her whole chest. Or is here to ask for the second time this chapter that if Lorsil has all of this power, why doesn't she simply stop all of this? She actually does kind of answer my question, which is mainly that the Spencers can't do their work without the help of the Guild, that their work is too fragile and would not survive another war. But what it mainly comes down to is that for every terrible person like Cormac, there are probably 100 innocent ones. People like Amy who would be caught up in an awful lot of death and destruction. The Guild, while inefficient and often cruel, coordinates these efforts. Again, it's great that you can identify the problem here, but if you sit back and do nothing to try and get them to change, I feel like you're only contributing to the problem, especially when you're in a position of such immense power like Lorsil is. And as what happened to the Earth, Lorsil says that 12 nations, intent on keeping the peace, came together to form Eris, that the rest of the countries destroyed themselves with their bombs. However, she hasn't actually seen the Earth, so she doesn't actually know. Which, isn't that how it always goes in the stories? They're eventually going to leave and find out life has gone on with the Earth, that there's no reason why they all had to be spinster slaves this entire time. And asks how Lorsil can know if the Earth was really destroyed or not, to which she replies that her mentor always told her that it had been, and why would you lie about that? But the most important lesson Ad has already learned, there's always a reason to lie. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book. Snark's always free and updated every morning. Newly added to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same things on Tumblr, but on Patreon. Supporters can have access to so many more books now starting at $1 a month. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trial, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn and Phoebe for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is, but not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!